I'm Pastor Mark Buetow, and this is another Higher Things video short, another episode of Bible 101. We saw the kingdom of the north, the kingdom of Israel, fall to the Assyrians. Well, the Middle East back in those days was awash in one superpower after another, and eventually the Assyrians were taken over by the Babylonians. The mighty empire of Babylon, scourge of the Near East, destroyer of the Assyrians, and the nation that finally the Lord used to punish his people in Israel, well, in Judah, in the southern kingdom, for their continued idolatry and turning away from them. The Babylonian Empire had absorbed the Assyrian Empire and was the great superpower in the Near East and the Lord's instrument for carrying out his judgment against the people, against Jerusalem and Judah. In the ancient Near East, Babylon was known for its beautiful and striking and even frightening architecture to show that it was the ruler of the world. Babylon's power was great and mighty and was an unstoppable force, conquering the peoples of the ancient Near East and finally even God's people. Babylon was known for one of the wonders of the ancient worlds, the great hanging gardens of Babylon. Was there any empire greater than the kingdom of Babylon that could even destroy God's own kingdom of Judah and Jerusalem? In the year 587 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar came to Jerusalem and he destroyed it. He cleared out the temple where God himself dwelt, carried off its gold and all its instruments and all the beautiful things in there as treasure, took the kings and the people of Judah off into captivity in Babylon, and that was pretty much the end of the kingdom of Judah. It was as if God's people had died. Sure, many of them were still living. They were taken to Babylon, and many of them lived pretty normal lives in Babylon. But they longed for their homeland. Would they ever see Judah again? Would they ever see Israel, the land of Canaan, the land that God had promised? The land that God had promised the people, they didn't live there anymore. And the Lord who had promised to dwell among them in his temple wasn't in that temple anymore. It's very much like when the Lord puts to death our old Adam, which turns away from God and must be put to death, must be crucified with Christ, must be buried in the waters of baptism so that a new man might arise. And the time will come when, in fact, God's people will be sent home from Babylon. Later on, a Persian king, because the Persians will take over the Babylonians, Persian king named Cyrus will set them free. But for now, the people of Israel are far from their homeland, far from the temple. And what do they have to live on? What sustains them? Well, the promises of God. It may seem an awful thing that God would allow this to happen to his own people, and yet they continually turned away from him until he says, fine, you can have what you want. If you don't want me for your Lord and King, then I won't be your Lord and King. And the evil kings had turned away from him, and so he sent his people into exile. It was a time of chastening, a time when the Lord is teaching them to turn away from themselves, turn away from their idols, and turn to him and the promises of his word. And when they're in Babylon, they have no temple, they have no land, but they have his word, they have his promises. And it is by those promises, the promises of a Savior, and the promises that the prophet made that they would indeed return home someday. It's by the Lord's word and promises that the people had hope and lived, just as we do, living in this world of sin, in this pilgrimage through life, until the Lord rescues us on the last day and brings us to everlasting life. So the kingdom of Judah has fallen. The kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, had fallen almost 150 years before, and now the kingdom of Judah is fallen in the year 587 to the Babylonians. But while it seems like the end, it's not, because God is faithful and his promises don't fail. And so we'll check out the people of God in exile in Babylon. What did they do? What did the prophets have to say? What was life like? Where was the Lord in all of this? Well, that's for more episodes of Bible 101. I'm Pastor Mark Buetow. This has been another Higher Things video short.